Keeper of the Lost Cities. Exile, Chapter 20. A burst of sharp cold terror ripped Sophie from her nightmares like her brain had just been stabbed with an icicle. She stumbled out of bed and ran to her door as Sylvie filled her head with an image that made Sophie's chest so tight she thought she might choke. Figures in black clothes, looming outside the enclosure, trying to get in. This time, Sophie didn't argue when Sandor insisted she wait inside while he searched the pastures for any sign of intruders, and Grady and Adeline sat with her as she watched the door, tugging out loose eyelashes and trying not to imagine the kidnappers storming the house. She jumped when the door slammed open, but it was only Sandor returning. His weapon was sheathed, and he looked much more calm than Sophie had expected as he loomed in the doorway. "Well?" Grady asked him. "The Alicon is terrified and screeching whenever anything comes near her pen, but I could detect no unfamiliar scents or signs of intruders. The yard is clear. The cliffside gate is locked. All seems normal." "But Sylvie saw them." Sophie could hear the hysteria in her voice, but she couldn't stop it. "She sent me an image of black-clothed figures." Adeline rubbed Sophie's back. "Maybe Sylvie had a nightmare. Weren't the Huskies wearing dark clothes when they came for her?" "Yes," Sophie admitted. "Well, then maybe she relieved that in a dream tonight, and it scared her." That did sort of make sense, but it seemed so real. Nightmares always do. "You said you didn't detect any unfamiliar scents," Grady said to Sandor. "Can you still detect the Huskies?" Sandor turned his head and sniffed the outside air. "Hints of them, yes." Sophie jumped to her feet. "Do you think they tried to take Sylvie again?" "Why would they do that?" Grady asked. "Timken wants to be in the nobility. Wouldn't training Sylvie help make that happen?" "If the council sanctioned it, yes. But stealing her in the middle of the night would merit a tribunal. And how else would they explain why they have her? Unless—" Grady started to pace, and he'd passed Sophie 3 times before he added, "I suppose they could have been trying to help Sylvie escape so they could rescue her and use that to prove our incompetency." Sophie could definitely see them doing something like that. "Can we do anything to stop them?" she asked. "I'll talk to the gnomes tomorrow about adding some extra security measures around a pen," Grady decided. "I should check on Sylvie." "Absolutely not," Sandor said, blocking her. "Not until I've done a more thorough sweep. I'll patrol the grounds tonight. No one can get past me." Sophie tried to go back to sleep, but Sylvie kept filling her mind with waves of panic and pleas for Sophie to let her go free, plus several words Sophie's mind couldn't translate. And no matter how many times she tried to convince Sylvie that she was safer in her enclosure, the stubborn horse wouldn't believe her. She survived the long hours by rumpling Iggy's pink curls, and when the first rays of dawn finally raised the night, she stumbled out of bed, threw on some work clothes, and made her way downstairs to try and calm Sylvie. Grady was already awake, sipping tea at the kitchen table. "Good, you're up," he said, offering her his last slice of some sort of brown, stringy fruit that reminded Sophie way too much of sludgers. "The gnomes and I tried to get started on Sylvie's pasture, but every time we get close to the bars, she whinnies and flies around. Think about after breakfast you can help keep her calm while we work." Sophie nudged the icky fruit away. It smelled even worse than it looked. "Actually, I can go now." Grady laughed. "You're missing out. Squirmings are delicious." Somehow, she doubted that. She wanted to gag as Grady shoved the rest in his mouth and motioned her to follow him outside. "Looks like she's still doing that weird diving thing," he said as Sylvie's enclosure came into view. Weird was right. The glittering horse kept tucking her wings and nose-diving from the highest part of her enclosure. At the last possible second, she'd pull up and circle back to the top to repeat the process, over and over and over. "Calm," Sophie transmitted, repeating the command until the Alicon broke her pattern and landed. She stamped her hooves as Sophie approached the bars. Sophie held out a handful of few swizzle-peas. Friend." "Fly," Sylvie replied, sending Sophie another image of her flying free in the starry sky. "It's safer here," Sophie promised. But as she stared into Sylvie's sad, pleading eyes, she couldn't help wondering if that was really true. Sylvie had survived on her own for who knew how long without the elves interfering. Could she take care of herself? Are you sure we shouldn't let her go? Sophie asked as she stepped closer and reached through the bars to call Sylvie over. Sylvie stayed out of reach. Why would we ever do that? She seems so sad in her cage. She's had a rough night. Once she calms down, she'll be okay. But I don't think she wants to be here. Grady sighed. None of the animals went to be here at first, Sophie. That's the part of the rehabilitation. Then why do we do it to them? You, of all people, should know how dangerous it is for animals in the wild. Predators, pollutions. Not to mention what would happen to a creature like Sylvanie if she were ever spotted by humans. And there are other threats too. Orcs do not value animal life the way we do. The trolls aren't so great either. The only way we can guarantee a creature's protection is to move them to a sanctuary. And once they are there, they love it. But we can't bring them until we know they're ready. That's why you've been assigned to help Sylvia adjust. But how? It had been almost a week and she'd made no progress at all. Patience, for one thing. Lots and lots of treats help too. Grady added as Sylvie finally caved and moved close enough to chomp down the swizzle piece Sophie was offering. But really, it's about figuring out what she needs. She's told me that already. She needs to be free. No, that's what she wants. What she needs isn't the same thing. I doubt Sylvie even knows it herself. Sophie sighed. Why couldn't anything ever be easy? Think she's calm enough for us to work on her enclosure now? I need to add a padlock to the gate. And the gnomes are going to add some extra poles to make the gaps between bars more narrow. That's all you're doing? What more do we need? Sophie wasn't sure, but stopping anyone from getting to Sylvie the way way different than stopping an intruder from setting foot at Havenfield in the first place. Part of her wished their house could be more like Everglen, with its massive gates that absorbed all the light. It probably got annoying that they were never able to leave directly home, but it had to be nice knowing no one could get to them. She couldn't tell Grady and Adeline that though. Alden and Della had offered to let her live with them when Grady and Adeline cancelled her adoption. And if she told them now that she wished their house was like Everglen, they might think she regretted her choice. And she didn't. But it would be nice to feel safer. Sylvie must have agreed because she twitched or whinnied every time Grady or the gnomes made a sound. And she kept filling Sophie's mind with image of the black cloaked figures. Safe, Sophie kept repeating. I promise you'll be safe here. She intended to keep that promise. Sylvie was trapped there because of her, because she'd heard Sylvie's thoughts and followed them and leaped her to Havenfield and coaxed her into the enclosure. And the only reason she wasn't undoing all of that and letting Sylvie fly away was because she believed Grady. It was a dangerous world for a sparkly flying horse. But if she was going to take away Sylvie's freedom, then she was going to make sure the Alicorn truly was better off. So when Grady and the gnomes were done with Sylvie's enclosure, Sophie wandered the ground, searching for some clue that Sandor might have missed that would tell her if Sylvie hadn't been right about the intruders. After several hours of finding nothing, Sophie was ready to concede that it really had been a nightmare. But then she found a pair of footprints in the tree line.